Allah khair. Since we will have Salatul Asr inshallah at 3 p.m. So I would request everyone to please be specific, to the point, and don't waste the time. Jazakumullah khair.
Are these extra copies or no?
No, these are notes. These are.
You have a copy of the decision? I have one, but it's just easier to read on paper.
Yes.
That's it.
Right. You can actually read it.
Okay, it's just going to take a second. I have it, but easier to get it here.
Oh, you want me to hold? Okay. You on it yet? Okay. Here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is this good? Can everybody hear me? Okay. نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد كما ورد في سورة النساء يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلوا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا أو كما قال الله تعالى وقال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد كما ورد في سورة آل عمران وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء وقال الله كتاب المجيد وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طرفه بأيديكم القرآن حبل الله الممدود من السماء إلى الأرض طرفه بأيديكم وطرفه بيد الله أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى آمين يا رب العالمين. My dear brothers and sisters who are present, who are online, respected members of the community, and Honorable Justice Kathy Bergman of the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Suffolk County of the Supreme Court of New York. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For the benefit of my non-Muslim audience, it is usual and customary, and especially in the house of worship, a house of Allah, house of God, to start any meeting, any mahfil, any majlis, any congregation with the word of God, with the word of Almighty Allah. And that is why I've started with 2 verses from the Quran and 1 saying, as we say, hadith of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The 2 verses that I read, one is from the 4th chapter of the Quran, verse number 135, in which the Almighty Lord says, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu, and that is the way that Allah addresses the people in the Quran, the believers, those who believe, iman, that kunu qawamina bil qist shuhada lillah. stand firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah. That is the first line of the verse. Irrespective of the fact, and I'm now doing a paraphrasing of the translation, irrespective of the fact whether it is against your parents or your relatives, whether it is against rich or poor, because at the end of the day, فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِهِمَا, Allah is the protector. He is the one that you are supposed to resort to. So don't fall for your desires, hawa, despite the fact that you might be inclined towards it. Do not do that. And Allah knows everything. God the Almighty knows everything, what you do. He is khabira. He has khabar of everything. The second verse that I recited is from the 3rd chapter of Quran, named Surah Al-Imran, in which Allah says that He, وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَاءُ. It is unto Allah, it is God who decides whom He exalts, tu'izzu, and whom He unexalts, tuzillu. Exalts and unexalts is how I translate it. There are many different translations. In Urdu, it's izza versus zilla, tu'izzu versus tuzillu. The saying of the Prophet that I recited in the introduction is basically the constitution of Islam, which is the Quran. So Allah, the Prophet ﷺ says, through one of the very most oft-quoted narrators of the sayings of the Prophet, as we call hadith, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that Al-Quranu hablullahil mamdud minas samai ilal ard. The Quran is like a rope that stretches from the sky to the earth. Minas samai ilal ard. Tarafahu bi'aydikum wa tarafahu biyadillah. One end of the rope is with you, the other end is with Allah. That is how the link between the earth and heavens above is built through Quran. And then I recited certain prayers and du'as so that we may be blessed in this congregation as well as anything that comes out of this congregation. So for the benefit of Justice Bergman and my non-Muslim audience, this is the reason why we start, no matter whether it is in the house of worship or anywhere else. We are here today to discuss the decision on the MDQ legal matter, the decision that was handed or rendered by the Honorable Justice Bergman on November 16th. There is a historical narrative to it, and there is a legal narrative to it. Today's session is based on these two aspects. How did we get here? And from this point onwards, how we are going to execute what the decision is. So first, I'm going to read the decision as the judge has written it, and then we will go into certain specifics and details. The Honorable Justice Bergman writes in her decision, the joint motion by the, and then she names the people, by the petitioners and respondents, then she names them, to compel enforcement of the mediation agreement dated April 29, 2023 is granted. The mediation agreement was entered following the initiation of this proceeding, this litigation, and is binding upon all parties hereto, it sets forth a plan inter alia for reincorporation of MDQ. Compliance with the mediation agreement is required and hereby directed. In addition, the Honorable Judge also writes in her decision that the motions for injunctive relief pending the determination of this proceeding are granted to the extent that, pending the final determination of this proceeding following mediation, the stay set forth in the order to show cause dated July 10, 2023 is continued, and the cross motion is granted. So much of the motion for an order extending time to answer is granted, and the motion sequence 003, movements shall have to and including December 31, 2023 to serve and file an answer. So much of said motion 003 as seeks an order compelling arbitration is denied. This is the third page of her three-page decision. I read the last page. The first two pages, basically, she summarizes the entire case in her words. For the benefit of understanding and interpretation, in consultation with the legal counsels, I divided, and if you see the way it's posted on the bulletin board also, I divided the decision and order part in three aspects, in three paragraphs. The first part was about 6 lines where she gives her decision in favor of the mediation agreement. That was done on April 29, 2023, literally exactly 7 months ago. In my opinion, understanding and interpretation, and again in consultation with the legal counsels, the decision is hierarchical. It's in a hierarchy because the judge, in her wisdom, writes it in a way that it explains the plan, which is why I was very pleased to read the line that she wrote in her decision, which in my opinion most aptly describes or captures the essence of the mediation agreement. She says, as I just read, it sets forth a plan inter alia for reincorporation of MDQ. To me, Honorable Justice Bergman has summarized in the most beautiful manner in one line. If anyone was to ask, what was the intention, what was the point of the mediation agreement? It was not to make sure that reincorporation should happen. It was to propose a plan for reincorporation. And that's why she uses the word, it sets forth a plan inter alia. Inter alia means among other things. In other words, she actually read the entire mediation agreement along with all the documents that are filed. And that, if I were to question how much of the specifics did the judge read, and this line tells me that she says that it sets forth a plan inter alia, among other things, meaning all the other things that it mentions, for the reincorporation of MDQ. What does the mediation agreement say or do? 7 months ago, when I personally, and I've mentioned this in my khutbah in May 5th and in the previous 2 sessions, but for the benefit of recapping and summarizing, because now the decision is rendered and she has made it binding, required, and directed. These are all words from the decision. I'm not using my own words. On all parties, meaning everybody that is part of this litigation. Respondents, movants, petitioners. 7 months ago, in about 7 days, when I first came to know about this litigation matter, I started a mediation process using the people that I was told to address in terms of primary litigants. And long story short, because this is already on record, 29th April, we came to an agreement. On May 5th, I announced it in the Friday prayers. And then, as per the mediation agreement, to institute a plan for reincorporation, for the next 2 months, the rest of the May and June, the attorneys worked on the proposed constitution and bylaws under Article 24. That was done over a period of 2 months until July 10th, when the proposed meeting was going to be announced. The judge, again, and this is how I started my first session, which obviously the first in both sessions, as far as I have been informed, were reviewed by the judge. I thanked the judge for the TRO that she had given on July 10th, because the two main things that she mentions or grants in that TRO is the openness, fairness, and transparency of this process. Hence, the order was granted, and we then moved towards rectifying the tenets of that TRO to make sure that it is open, transparent. All of this for the benefit of people who have not seen is addressed in the first 2 sessions that were done before this. The difference between this session and the previous 2 ones were, there I was rectifying, with the help of the counsel, the things that were pointed out that the judge agreed with, and it was very well appreciated. Today, again, I must appreciate the judge's decision, not because it is in favor of the mediation agreement that was done by me, because she has decided that the mediation agreement sets forth a plan for the reincorporation of MDQ. So in her wisdom and in her decision, this is what she has decided. The mediation agreement was done 7 months ago in 7 days. 7 months later, at a cost of a phenomenal amount, we are basically where we started from 7 months ago. Same exact point. But it took us 7 months and a judge's decision and a lot of money to get there. That in and of itself should be a lesson. But most of things in the life, we sometimes have to go through. Perhaps in those 7 days, it was rushed. But at that time, the very members, the elders of the community, if you open up that link and watch the video, praised this very mediation agreement. So if anything, when the 4 members of the community stood up here after the khutbah I delivered on May 5th, the 4 elders of the community were part of the mediation signatories, Dr. Hafizur Rahman, Brother Rafi Rajput, Brother Athar Sohail, and Brother Shahid Mia. Listen to what they said about the mediation agreement. Well, glad tidings, because the judge 7 months later agrees with you. She just said that, yes, what you said 7 months ago is right. The mediation agreement sets forth a plan inter alia for reincorporation of MDQ. That means that our methodology to get to July 10th, which was delayed by the judge for a very good reason, that it should be transparent. Then we moved towards another date of August 8th, then September 12th, then September 26th, well, September 22nd, then September 26th. because on September 22nd, I believe was a Friday, September 26th, the judge said, I only hear motions on Tuesdays. So we had to move it to September 26th, then October 12th, and then October 25th, and then October 31st, because filings were being filed. It was one thing or another. Sometimes it was the donors list, sometimes it was this. All of this is public record. Nothing I'm saying is not privy to the public. It's all public filings. So there is nothing I'm saying. Right now, there is no opinion. It is just facts. This is the order. What happened over the 7 months? Why did it take that long? And at the end of the day, the very judge that many of the members here praised on July 10th, that she gave such a wonderful TRO, which I started my session with, is the same judge who has now rendered this decision. That should be the final call from the judge's perspective. Can you challenge this? Of course, the American justice system allows you to do. This is the great thing about the American court system. You can always do. There are processes, legal processes. You can appeal. You can still get a TRO. You can go to the appellate court. You can do everything that you want. Do you want to still continue to do that despite the fact that 7 months ago, what took me 7 days to decide among the elders of the community, same exact decision judge just gave 7 months later? That is the first, that is why she starts the decision with that. That is why if I am wrong in my interpretation, if I am wrong in my, or incorrect, or I'm not aptly describing my impression or interpretation of her decision, well, she's going to watch this. And she can say that, no, Mr. Mediator, you did not interpret it correctly. I personally feel that it is a hierarchical decision. It's a very wise decision. Again, not because it's in favor of what I did. It's because the way she writes the decision. 3 ways. What's the second part? Now I'm going to come to the second part. And then the third part. The way I divide it, I beg forgiveness from the judge and take liberty to explain your decision, which, if anybody has any objection to, the American justice system allows you to challenge that. And you can go to court and say that. And the judge can also tell me that no, not exactly like that, but until she does, it is very straightforward. The second part, even though, remember, with all due respect to the writer of the decision, it's all in one paragraph, because the way it appears in court, it's just for the benefit of the people that I've divided it into three paragraphs. The second paragraph says, so the first, again, hierarchical. Then she says that pending the final determination, this is why I say it's hierarchical. She says that as long as until you first implement the mediation agreement, and again, mediation agreement implementation means that you take a member's vote. There is a very good likelihood, or let's say equal chance, that the reincorporation is not voted in favor of. Because the mediation agreement says you're going to get a reincorporation vote, not enforce it by force, by compulsion. That was the point. And part of that was the new constitution and bylaws. The new constitution and bylaws, which was made such a big deal out of that, oh my God, what are we going to do? There are so many things that we don't like in here. Again, with the implicit permission of the judge, the US Constitution was written in 1787. It was submitted in 1788. It was ratified in 1789. Since 1789, there have been more than 11,000 amendments proposed to the US Constitution. More than 11,000 amendments till this day. 27 of those have been ratified. The first 10 we call the Bill of Rights. That were ratified pretty quickly. But the rest of the 17, the last amendment was ratified on May or December of 1992. Do you know when it was proposed?
In 1789.
202 years later it was ratified. That was the 27th Amendment, the most recent one. Most of the students over here, for the benefit of the students, this is the agenda, and because I am doing it as part of the judge's order, so please wait and listen, okay? This is the agenda. It's written on there, community info. I have to explain the decision. I am the mediator that she gave the decision, so I'm explaining that, so you have to patiently listen. I'm giving an example, okay? You have to wait till I finish, okay? Please, that's the etiquette. Follow the etiquettes, okay? And it says community information session, not Q&A session. Okay. I'm going to finish because I'm doing this for the sake of the judge also. Okay, I'm explaining. It is my responsibility to explain the decision because she has given. Yes, I'm coming to that. Wait. 3 o'clock. And then after Asr break, if there are more questions, you can stay longer, I can wait. Yeah, he's going to be here. Once I finish, then you can. Okay, right now, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to finish. Okay? No. And this is also, and I'm glad that you're doing this so that it can be watched also. The CBL is going to be a living document. My point with respect to the Constitution's example is that it is a living document. Just because it is voted on doesn't mean that that is what is going to be implemented and it will never be changed. So we always have the ability for the next governance to change all of that. In addition, the judge has also said a granted cross motion. Until the mediation is enforced, during this time, any legal payments from the masjid funds, that cross motion she has granted, and the attorney will explain that further. The final part of her decision is compelling the motion to arbitration she denies. This is the way the decision is structured, the way the judge has rendered it. Now I am going to turn it over for the legal aspects of it, and then for the next 5-10 minutes you can explain from a legal point of view, and then for the next 30 minutes we can have the questions.
Thank you so much, Brother Irfan. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. And thank you so much for having me here again. The judge's order is complex. It decided no less than 5 motions in one, essentially. So I know everyone is eager, I'm sure, to ask questions and to discuss this, so I won't go into complex, long-winded legal analyses. You don't need that. If you have legal questions, ask them. I'm happy to try to answer them. But I will summarize just 2 points. Obviously, we know that the judge's order commands, orders, directs that we should comply with the mediation agreement. We know that. But it also, inter alia, to use the legal phrase, it also requires, that the process going forward up to that election of trustees should be fair, open, and transparent. And that's what today is about. That's what the previous informational meetings have been about. Just conversation is a waste of time. Conversation is only as good as actions that follow it. Just like they say, an apology is useless if it's not followed by action. So a conversation needs to be followed by action. So today, in analyzing and in implementing the judge's order as we go forward, I think we are guided by 4 things. There are 4 things that are driving us. When I came in, I was standing in the back and prayer was still going on, so I politely waited in the back, and a very nice gentleman, thank you whoever you were, came over to me and offered me a chair and said, he reminded me, well, you're in the house of Allah. And so it's humbling to know that and to think of that. And so first we're guided by Allah. We're guided by God. And I really mean that. I really, really mean that. I'm not just using that as a line. We have to be guided by our faith, by humanity, by goodness and kindness. I hope we can all find a way to do that. Of course, I'm a lawyer. We're guided by the law. And so we have to comply with the law. We're guided now because of the judge's directive, or confirmed by the judge's directive. We're guided by the mediation agreement. And I just want to make one point about a mediation agreement. You probably know, many of you may know, what the difference is between mediation and arbitration. Arbitration is binding. If 2 people have a contract and it says they have to go before an arbitrator, whatever the arbitrator decides, you're stuck with. Arbitration is almost impossible to appeal. There are very, very, very rare circumstances where you can succeed in appealing. A legal ruling you can always appeal. Arbitration you can never appeal. Mediation is different. Mediation is non-binding. You don't have to follow it unless you want to. Mediator could be your next door neighbor, could be anyone. The 2 of you say, look, we have a dispute, let's not go to court. Let's go to so-and-so. The mediator could be the Imam. People do that a lot. They go to their religious leader, they say, we honor you, we respect you, help us resolve this. The Imam sits down with the 2 of you in privacy. He tries. He makes a recommendation maybe. If one person says, forget it, I don't like what the Imam says, it's not binding, he doesn't have to listen. But if both sides agree, then they sign an agreement. Why am I mentioning this? Because there's something special about the fact that this was not an arbitration where both sides were compelled to comply. There were 2 sides in court. There were petitioners and respondents. And maybe because it's the house of Allah, and God inspired those 2 sides to say, we're not going to go powwow in court for 3 years. We're going to settle this like good, God-fearing people are supposed to. And they did that. And my firm was already retained at that point to represent one side, the respondents. And before we knew what happened, all of a sudden, I've never seen it happen this quickly in my career as a lawyer, thank God. All of a sudden, in like a matter of days, we were told, there is an agreement. I said, what? There was even mediation? How did this happen so fast? Thank God that wisdom prevailed, and the 2 sides sat down, and they signed an agreement, and they said, we're going to settle this. I think Brother Irfan surely had a very important role in that. He's a very wise man, I've come to know. And somehow that happened with lightning speed. And fast forward, there was a lot of stuff that happened, unfortunately, in between. A lot of money was spent, but I'd like to believe there's something good that comes from everything. And that's what I want to get to. So now the judge says that mediation agreement that the two sides agree to is going to be followed. Well, in the interim, a lot happened, right? I met with all of you twice before. I listened. I listened to you. We listened to you. When we speak of fair, open, and transparent, fair means only one thing. Fair means you have at least begun by listening. To be fair to your side is not being fair. Fairness means you listen to everyone. I listened. I heard at least 3 major concerns. I heard people concerned, very, very concerned about the under-inclusiveness or the lack of recognition of the voices of women, of certain minorities, nationalities, racial, whatever it is, that there is not recognition. We address that. So the earlier version of the proposed CBL, Constitution and Bylaws, now has a revision where there is the addition of a diversity and inclusion standing committee. A standing committee means it's not an ad hoc committee that you have one time. It's a permanent committee, so that there is checks and balances. This is God's house. God has men children and women children. They all get recognized. And if the women, their voices are not being heard, this Inclusiveness Committee has not only a committee that talks, but it has power. It has power to make recommendations to the Nominating and Election Committee. Basically, it has the power to make sure that the nominating process is going to include those under-included. So certain representation by those whose voices have not been heard will be heard in the election process. That's an important thing. We listened and we heard you. And so to the ladies who spoke to me last time, I heard you, and thank you for speaking so eloquently. We heard that there was a big thing made about the bylaws because for practical reasons, and we always learn something new. I always used to say at a congregational meeting, when you propose bylaws, the law requires you have a certain number, you have in writing what's called the embodiment of the bylaws, of the proposed changes to the bylaws. So I usually said keep a stack of 4 or 5. If somebody wants to come look at it, they come up and look at it. Well, apparently somehow that was construed as we didn't put enough. So I said from now on, it's in the bylaws. In the CBL, it says that any proposed bylaws will be made abundantly available, stacks will be made available, it'll be emailed to people, it'll be put online, whatever means we need. Nothing is going to be, the wool is not going to be pulled over anyone's eyes. If there's anyone, Brother Irfan made the point, a good point, even though it was an interesting constitutional history lecture, I was very fascinated by some of the things he mentioned, but it's important that people propose amendments to bylaws over time and things, but everything will be transparent. If anyone wants a change, there will be a process, it'll be implemented, and it'll be a proposed amendment to the bylaws. Either it'll be adopted or it won't, but that's going to be a fair process. So your voices will be heard. And the third thing, and this was a really big one, sometimes how you phrase something makes a big difference, because it just, you go to the gas station and they charge you $3.99 and it's $4. We all know we're not stupid, but it still sounds better at $3.99 than at $4. So how you phrase something that makes a difference. So the term lifetime trustees, I think maybe was less than wisely chosen, because it sounds like, lifetime, they're going to take over the house, they're going to be there forever. It just wasn't the intention. The statute, Article 24, says that trustees can be either elected or appointed. So it allows for 2 classes, 2 kinds two different types of trustees, either elected or appointed. Elected means the people out there elect and appoint. So what we had constructed previously was that trustees that have been there for many years, they've served, they've put, I don't even remember, I have to look, I think 3 or 4 terms, they've been there for a number of years, they have earned the right to not have to be again elected again and again. They've got what we then called a lifetime position. We'll get rid of that. And what we've gone to, since the judge says let's follow the mediation agreement had actually called it permanent board. So the phraseology now will be the permanent / appointed board, because that's what the statute uses, appointive. And so that's going to be the terminology. But more important than the semantics, what was the real key? The real key was to make sure that nobody gets into office and can do anything they want and they can never be removed. So we've changed that. So even the permanent board, even the appointed board, can be removed by a 2/3 vote of either the entire board or the entire membership. In other words, somebody does something really bad, they shouldn't be entitled to. Somebody commits a felony, what are they going to stay on the board and you can't get rid of them? It's true. So they can be removed for malfeasance or by a 2/3 vote of either the majority of the board or the congregation. So we have listened to you. We have listened to the best of our ability. And those are proposed amendments that would be in the new proposed board. CBL. The judge didn't ask us to do this. We could have taken the same old bylaws we had here 2 months ago when we showed you. But that's not what we do in the house of Allah, and that's not what we do when we have a judge telling you to be fair, open, and transparent. We have to do the right thing. The right thing is the right thing. And so we're listening to you, and we've included those changes. And, as Brother Irfan said, even that is not in cement. Next year, if there are new things that you see, there is a process, under the law, of course, but in the bylaws, there's a process for amending the bylaws. You have a way to bring a proposed amendment. There is a bylaws committee. The bylaws committee considers it. If there's a whole process. They bring it to the board votes on it, and then that becomes a proposed bylaw change, which generally would be brought up at the annual meeting. And every year you could have, normally you don't amend bylaws every year. Normally once every 5 or 6 years you amend bylaws. But if there's one particular thing we're reorganizing, if we reorganize under Article 24, then there are going to be tweaks that you need in the earlier years. Once you're set and you've made your first 2 or 3 amendments, you're probably going to be good for 10 years. But in the first few years, you're going to notice a few things that even we don't have the vision and the wisdom to foresee. So you're going to suddenly see in a year and a half, we missed something, and you're going to make a proposed amendment. You'll discuss it, and then you make that amendment. So all of these things can and will happen. So that's all I want to say right now as an opening. I really, really hope that we can move forward together. I hope that this community can avoid more and more expenses, but more importantly, I hope we can all avoid more strife, more discord, more fighting when we can work together. That's what a mediation agreement is supposed to be, people sitting together. That's what open and fair and transparent is supposed to be. So thank you for listening patiently to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Can I answer questions? Or should they come up to a mic? Or maybe just pass it out?
Use for anyone who use. Yes, you come to the front, please.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. The first question I wanted to ask, I was confused. You said there's something called permanent. It used to be lifetime. So are you saying after you're elected, you're on the permanent board and you will never go through another elections?
So the CBL, I'm sorry, the Article 24 of the Religious Corporations Law allows for either trustees to be either elected or appointed. Elected means you have an election, right, and people vote. Appointed means someone appoints you. It doesn't say who. So it could be the Imam appoints. It could be the mayor appoints. I don't think you would want the mayor to appoint. I'm saying that facetiously, of course. So realistically, the way it normally goes when you have an appointed board, a non-elected board, I'll give you an example. There is in one section of the Religious Corporations Law called Article 9. Article 9, and there are a lot of Article 9 churches in New York. Article 9 is a house of worship that has no members, no elections, it just has a board. Who appoints board members? The board themselves appoint board members. So you have a board that runs the congregation, and then if somebody moves away or resigns or, God forbid, dies, the other members of the board pick, they sit, they discuss who would be a qualified person. The person who left was he was a CPA, he had great insight into finance, we need another very good financial person. They look among the congregation, they find somebody and they say, would you agree? That person agrees, they take a vote among themselves, and that person is appointed. It's not an election, it's an appointment by the existing trustees. So that part of the board of the trustees that we would call the permanent or the appointed board would be appointed by those board members themselves. The other part of the board is the elective board. It's a hybrid. The way it was structured is to accommodate both elements of Article 24, which provides for both of these types. But really, why do we have this set up? You know, you have the people, you always have people in a congregation who have been around a long time, who have been in a congregation for 20, 30 years, 40, 50 years. Sometimes these are the people who literally laid the founding bricks of the building. They have vision, they have wisdom. But then you have young blood, you have new people who come with a new, modern, fresh view of the world. Their voices also need to be heard. So you could have either different types of congregations, or you could have a congregation that listens to both of them. That's what this structure was designed to do. To have the vision of those, the permanence of those who've been around for a long time, and to have the constant fresh blood and renewal and new views, modern views, forward-thinking views that incorporate modern technology, that incorporate modern principles of governance. That's what this other group. And by the way, the notion, I think, is that those people who are now on the elective board, if they stay on the elective board and they're there for 2, 3, 4 terms, they eventually graduate and become members when spots open. They become members of the permanent board. That's the idea. It's like a cycle, a beautiful cycle of the new and the old, that eventually the new moves into the old and the new moves into the old. You bring in fresh ideas, fresh blood, and it moves forward. That's the idea of this, of the way it's structured.
So what you're saying is we'll have a number of the permanent board, a certain number, and we'll have a certain number
50-50.
50-50. I think that's what brought the problem that we have today. We are going right back to the same problem.
Why is that?
If you, my honest opinion, if you have served so many years, you should be an advisor. You shouldn't be, again, still on the board. Be an advisor to the board. Let the board continuously be an elected position, not people grandfathering to another board. Like we have the United Nations got a permanent class that just stays until they die. That's my honest opinion.
That's not an unfair opinion. You know, there are different ways of looking. It's the old question of should there be term limits, right? Some people say no term limits. Some people say term limits. But I have personally found that organizations that are solid have a solid grounding. They always have those people who were there from the beginning, helping to guide it forward, taking action, being part of the mechanism that moves the congregation forward. But that's for the congregation to decide. We felt when we put this together with petitioners, respondents, everyone together, the whole team decided that this would be the best blend and the best, smartest way to go forward. So that's why this was adopted. But I appreciate your views. It's an intelligent viewpoint. I don't want to be the one to call, so I'm going to leave it to Imam to pick, because I don't want to, I don't know who's who, so. Sure.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a comment, it's not a question. I'm going to ask you, we spend like over 100,000. Then, yes. 200? Oh my God. Okay, whatever the number is. And then we come to agree for the recommendation. Brother Irfan said, how shameful it is. Why we didn't sit down, all of us, and listen to this young man, and we come to common ground.
Thank you.
This is not your money. Who spent this money? Who gave the approval?
Thank you very much for saying that.
You know, it's a shame we have to go to this level. What happened in MDQ should stay in MDQ. No one else should get involved in that. And it's very disheartening.
If I may, I thank you for your comment, and I just want to respond very quickly to that. My law firm is a for-profit business. I love clients, I love making money. But I hate making money off of disputes like this. I would much rather be in there litigating. We do a lot of religious liberty litigation where we represent people who were discriminated against based on their faith. Things like that I enjoy because I'm protecting God's people. I hate doing these kinds of disputes. Really. When I walked out last time, I shook the hands of those people who are on the quote-unquote other side. But to me, there is no other side. They're all God's people. We all want this to end. So I agree with you that we need to sit down together. Look, I really genuinely listened to everyone last time, and we tried to incorporate what they said. Let's try to work together going forward. I love making money, but not this way. Don't give me any more money. Let's settle this as quickly as we can. Let's have a member vote and let's move forward.
I agree with you, and I hope we all should sit together. We have all these wonderful people. You can guide the young people, but let's work together. It's a shame to go to the court. Why does happen?
Are there any other questions?
Just so that
ladies
the
have
agenda
any questions,
also
Brother
was...
Irfan? Do the ladies have any
Yes.
questions? Okay.
So, as per the decision of the judge, the reincorporation meeting was announced for Sunday, December 10th. By RCL, you have to announce it on 2 Fridays. It was announced on Friday, December 1st. It will be announced again on December. So unless there is another hindrance or anything, the reincorporation vote, as per the judge's decision and order, will be held on Sunday, December 10th at 1:30 p.m. So just so you know, in the masjid, over here in the main prayer hall, just in case if anybody has to leave, but that's the ultimate manifestation of the decision.
Do any of the sisters have a question?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry?
How is that stayed? No.
She continued to stay until at least January.
No, Peter, I don't want to get into a legal argument with you, but if you read the order that the judge signed in December, in July, which she cites in her decision, it specifically enjoins such a meeting until such time when, among other things, there is a judicial determination, and there has been a determination of that motion by the judge. The judge said, go forward. In fact, the judge directed the reincorporation, and that only happens by a vote. So I know that you filed another motion on Friday, and I wish you wouldn't have, because we could have just had a phone conference with the judge. You could have just called me and said, I want clarification of this. Let's pick up the phone and talk to the judge. And now it's going to cost the people of this masjid another tons of thousands of money on this side and that side, when we could have just had a phone call with the judge. Well, the judge will decide that, and that'll be determined later.
Let's put it this way.
But there's no need to have. I'm saying. Let me just finish
your
this.
attorneys are meeting in the court to discuss this, and you can.
All I'm doing is I'm appealing to everyone, like this gentleman said. There is a way to do thing God's way, and there's a way to do thing human way. Animals, in the forest, in the wilderness, it's survival of the fittest. But we're people, we're not animals, we're human beings. And God guides us, and we act like God's children. So we should talk. There is a time to go into the court, when you have to. Even good people sometimes can't agree, you go to court. But we're happy to talk. Peter, I'm not your enemy. We're adversaries, but I'm not your enemy. Pick up the phone, call me, we'll try to work things out. We need clarification from the judge. I'm sorry. It would save the people money if you withdraw that motion and we just have a conference call with the judge and ask the judge to clarify it. We don't need to file papers, otherwise I need to file more papers and it costs everyone a lot more money. So anyhow.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I'm sure most of the people know me. I've been with the masjid day one. Many folks came after me. Too many scenarios, I know what went on. Now, I will summarize what you said. I've been listening very carefully. Judge is smart. She has taken the mediation. Okay, you guys decided, and do what you decided. My question is, will the present board be dissolved and a new election will be held?
That's what happens. It's in the mediation agreement. The mediation agreement sets forth those two boards, a new election. Nothing will happen unless and until a majority of the members of the congregation elect those new trustees.
Exactly. What I'm trying to say, for the last 40 years, I've been with the founder, the gentleman who's no longer here. He's alive, but he's in Florida. And barely he attends. And I know the majority of people involved. I've been shut out, quiet. I've been watching, quiet. I've been giving my opinion one year to the other year. That's why today we have spent $200,000. If we all cooperate together and say, listen, you have served 4 terms, 5 terms, 6 terms, fine, time for you to leave. Get the new blood. There are well-educated people than myself. I'm 73. I'm just way behind. We need fresh blood. 50. We need even the elders. People come to me, call me for advice. I tell them, this is the way to go. Okay? And Mr. Moore has been also with us a long time. So anyway, I hope they will follow the mediation and the rest you follow. Thank you.
Just one thing, if any of the sisters, Imam, have any questions.
So I'll request you, we have just 14 minutes left in Salah, so please, just everyone, if you have question, within 2 minutes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Brother, I missed the beginning part. My apologies, and I have a few disruptions here, alhamdulillah. But I just wanted to get the agenda cleared for today's call to the masjid for this gathering. It's to let us know that there will be an election held on December 10. Is that what this is?
It is.
Speaking to the mic. Here, use this.
Yes, that was announced.
Yes.
But after the announcement, the movement's attorney have what would be the right word, have not agreed with that. And they have decided that they need further clarification. So as per the interpretation of the people, of the attorneys who filed the joint motion in favor of which the judge rendered the decision, according to that, on December 1st, the movement's attorney, Mr. Creedon, who is here, who was just speaking, he wants to meet in court for further clarification. So let's say the judge, something else comes out of it and the judge says something else, then we'll announce accordingly. As of right now, yes.
Okay. And my second question, if I don't take up too much time, is that you said that you've been revising the bylaws, and I appreciate that you took our time and our whatever we had to say last time into consideration. So you've been modifying the bylaws. So you have that copy with you today?
Yes, electronically I can send
electronically.
it to you. Right. Yes. Yes, we can. So just to correct you technically, just so because this is in front of a legal judge, I've not been revising it. Actually, it was it's not in my job is not to revise the, my job is to take the input that that everybody has given and then incorporate that. The judge decided in favor of the mediation agreement. If you have a copy of the mediation agreement lists certain dates.
Okay.
So interpretively, if the judge is saying follow the, she did not change even one word of the mediation agreement. I mean, I'm surprised that she did not change that. So if I'm going to follow the mediation agreement, I'm going to follow it down to the T. Okay. So if it says June 30th, and as the directive that was drafted by that went under my name, it is basically because it follows the exact mediation agreement. So the bylaws, however, because that was the example that I was giving, it's a living document, that changes can be incorporated. But just in case, we have to strictly follow the bylaws of a certain time because of the mediation agreement, because of the judge's decision, then in that case, those bylaws can always be amended.
Okay. All right, and my last question, I promise, is that you had, sorry, I didn't catch your name.
I'm Barry.
I'm Barry. You mentioned that a mediation usually in a house of worship is done through the Imam. I'm just curious, why didn't that happen this time? How did that play out? Why wasn't that, I mean, this is something the community would have favored, right?
Let me just answer this. Yeah, just to clarify.
Understand that better.
Sorry, yeah. I don't think I said it usually happens. I said sometimes it happens that way. When two people have a dispute, they'll go to the Imam, to the pastor, the rabbi, whoever, in whatever kind of a congregation they'll go, because that's a normal way to do things if two people have a dispute. But normally when there is for example, there are contracts. There are clergy contracts. A clergyman's contract usually has a mediation/arbitration provision, which is within the faith. So if it's a Islamic house of worship, if it's a mosque, it will have an mediation arbitration agreement by a Islamic organization that does arbitration and mediation. So it's within the faith, but it's not necessarily in the mosque itself. That's the way it's normally done. But as far as how it happened here, he can tell you, because I was not part of that process. I don't know how that happened.
You're absolutely right. The reason why it happened this way is because this litigation started around October of 2022. I came to know of it in April. By that time, the Imam and so many other people had tried. Nobody asked me to do this. I did this on my own volition. And at that time, the qualification to be a mediator is people who are disputing have to agree, which they did. So I came at the end and just offered, so that's why. But the Imam and everybody had been involved. Unfortunately, nobody could agree to it until I proposed the solution.
The Imam was involved between both parties to do a mediation?
Before me, many people were involved and tried.
You weren't involved prior to this brother's mediation. Were you between? No. Okay. All right. My last question: were you?
No, you're not right.
Brother Irfan, if you could just let me know, or let us, I just want to give you the platform to answer this question.
Sure.
For the mediation services, are you paid for it?
No,
This
absolutely.
is all for the sake of Allah?
Absolutely not, and in fact, this is something I'm going to address because not right now, in one of the affidavits, in one of the affidavits by one of the movements, it was written that upon information and belief, I'm not going to name that person, but I will address this. Once this is all over, there are things that I have to address with certain people, where there are accusations of forgery, lying, and to the fact that I have been paid. Not only have I not been paid, there are 6 emails of me showing that this is how much, if I were charging, this is because there is mediation done officially, this is what the invoice would look like with an explanation. And I'm very sad to hear that this kind of vilification was done, and it was written in an affidavit that was filed with the paper that upon information, belief, I don't know what information and what belief, who forwarded this information, but yes, let me make it emphatically clear, and I will pursue this after this, that whoever did this, whoever said that I have been paid, or in fact, I think the exact words in the affidavit are, and then he responded to it that upon penalty, which would be perjury, because somebody is lying about me, under penalty of perjury. They specifically said that the Masjid Darul Quran is planning to pay the mediator. I'm paraphrasing the words, you can look it up in the affidavit, but inshallah I will pursue that afterwards.
So,
No, just let me simply clarify it. Yeah, he just clarified. I just want to say one thing. The reason that was even mentioned or raised, why he had to put that in the affidavit, is we were trying to show how much money, how much time has been spent, I think, sadly, between lawyers, between the time. The man is busy, the man has a life, and he's spending tons of time. So what he did was he put together a affidavit which said, look, these are the hours that I've invested in this. If I were charging, this is what it would have looked like, to give the judge an idea that this is not a man who sat down for 2 hours and mediated. He's put in hundreds of hours. I've spoken with him in London, in Pakistan. I've spoken to him in New York. I've spoken to him God knows where. At 2 in the morning, I don't know when the man sleeps, but every time I email him, he responds. I text him, he responds in 2 seconds. When do you sleep? The man has spent so much time with this that we said, the lawyers, you have to let the judge know how much you're actually investing in this. But he has not been paid.
What part of this was not clear to you? No, absolutely not. How many times have I...
And it's in an affidavit, in a sworn affidavit. He has never been paid and is not wanting to be paid and will not be paid, period.
Okay. Thank you very much for your response. Quick question for Irfan and Barry. Is the board operating under new bylaws till the election takes place?
Is the
board operating, is the masjid operating under new bylaws?
Yes, as per the directive that was issued for the temporal affairs of the masjid, the board is operating.
Okay. And second is, as part of the decision, as I understand, and you guys can elaborate on it, the movement, the party which actually came out, which was EC, so I don't want to be, I want to be very clear, who are the people, so people know who did what. I'm all about transparency, and I just want people to know who did what. So BOT and EC was sued by Athar Sohail, and then when they mediated, and along with some other people, and when they mediated, they came to an agreement, and then members of EC, which are called movement, went to the judge and said that this process needs to be fair and transparent, which Irfan and Ms. Barry appreciated. Along the lines, when you get into these legal things, a lot of things then go up and down. That said, one of the things that we one of the filings that we did was to ask for board to stop using the mosque money, which the judge granted. Now, based on that judgment, is the BOT or the mosque, which has used congregational money, planning to pay the masjid back the money? Because
Okay,
that is the mosque's money.
Okay, so I will answer that. First of all, as you know, Mr. Creedon, who's sitting right near you, has made another motion now, which among other things asks the court for clarification. And the court will clarify. Our reading of that is twofold. First of all, it says the masjid's money should not be spent by the trustees. Now, the trustees, the petition sues the trustees in their individual capacity and as the BOT. It doesn't say, and it can't say under the Constitution, that the BOT can't spend money, because the BOT represents MDQ. MDQ needs a lawyer. No court in the world constitutionally can tell a masjid, you can't hire a lawyer. You can't do that. Separation of church and state. Okay, it's very clear you can't do that. What the judge said in the judge's decision, as I read it, and maybe the judge will clarify that, I hope she does, is that the trustee defendants, read it in the decision, the trustee defendants are precluded from spending the mosque's money, number one. And, second qualifier, for this litigation. Does not say for enforcement of the mediation agreement, does not say for reincorporation, does not say for drafting bylaws. How in the world is MDQ supposed to reincorporate, which is a complicated process, drafting bylaws under Article 24, which is only less than a dozen years old, which it takes dozens of hours to even come up with bylaws. And not to pat myself on the back, but our firm is the only firm in New York that does what we do, which is nothing but representing religious institutions. We eat, drink, sleep, and live. The RCL, I have the RCL always a shortcut on my desktop because I look at it 1,000 times a day. And even we struggle with, how are we going to craft this? What does this word of Article 24 mean? What is that? How is the MDQ going to reorganize if it doesn't have a lawyer doing it? So I'm happy that Mr. Creedon is asking the judge for clarification so that we don't misread it, but that's how we read it. It says, should MDQ, the trustee defendants, should not use masjid's funds for this litigation. You individually, as defendants, have to defend yourself from your own money, but the masjid needs to hire lawyers, and the masjid needs to have lawyers doing the reincorporation that the judge herself ordered. Otherwise, how do you do it? I just don't know how it's physically possible to do something as sophisticated as reincorporating under Article 24 without a lawyer. Yeah. First of all, there's no such thing as misappropriation of funds. Misappropriation of funds is a technical term which means a whole different things. It involves fraud, it involves all sorts of shenanigans. We're not talking about misappropriation. We're just talking about whether at this stage trustee defendants are allowed to use mosque funds to defend themselves. That's how I read it. And my understanding is the judge said until the mediation is completed, they can't. My thinking is probably she said that because we want proper elections, and once we have proper trustees elected, of course the mosque is going to pay its legal fees. My letter of engagement is with a mosque. I represent MDQ. So, you know, we're putting in a lot of time. My time is money. That's my profession. And if you're a doctor and I go to you for services, I expect to pay you. So people pay for the services. So I expect the judge is not going to tell our firm, you don't get paid. She doesn't have, I don't think she would do that, even if she had the authority to do that. So, yeah.
Like PC was sued along the BOT, but PC when saw that BOT or they were spending Moss's money parting ways, and we paid for our own funds to defend ourselves. And then went to the judge asking the same thing, that Moss money should not be used. So that's the same courtesy that you're asking the Lord to pay back to Moss.
Except for one thing. Yeah.
Just so, because you know, for the sake of transparency, both the movements and the petitioners, both of them paid for their own legal costs.
I just want to say, it's a fine line, and I understand what you're saying, but unfortunately, under the law, the trustees are the administrators of the temporalities of the finances of the church, and I use that in a non-sectarian sense. So the trustees represent MDQ. Who else is supposed to pay lawyers? You don't take, if you have to hire a lawyer, you don't have a congregational meeting and pass around a plate and people put in money. The trustees are authorized under the law to use the funds. I'm going to pause now and I'll be available.
Right, so we have to start the Asr prayer, and we'll break for that, but after that, it's up to you.
Inshallah, it's done. I think it's enough for today. Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Berry and Brother Irfan and everyone for joining us today. Jazakumullahu khair, and looks forward, inshallah, to hold the election, inshallah, on December 10th.
We'll do Q&A for 10, not more than 15 minutes after Salah.
How long is this, Irfan?
Very stay. 15 minutes. We're just going to do this. Yes.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
استووا استقيموا الله أكبر بسم الله الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. The best thing right now, the most judicious thing right now to do is that the movements, or one party, let's say, one party still is seeking further clarification on the matter, even though the judge has rendered its decision. The reincorporation vote is scheduled for December 10th. However, the meeting, the clarification between the judges and the attorneys between the judge and the attorneys is going to happen sometime this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever the attorneys decide. Best thing is right now to wait for that, because it might be, as a mediator I'm telling you, that it might be that there is something that the judge might modify in light of these questions. So we might not either need to do another session, or we might need to change certain projected dates. So best thing is that we will not hold any more question and answers. Instead, we will wait for the outcome of the attorneys and the judge's meeting and the mediator, and we'll see what the judge, in other words, we're requesting the judge to completely make sure that whatever we interpret is exactly right. There is absolutely no difference of opinion on the first part, that the judge has ordered the mediation agreement to prevail, binding, directed on all parties. Second, third part need to be understood. So let's just wait for that. That's the best thing to do. By Friday you'll know, because they are supposed to have, the attorneys and the judge and the media are going to have this meeting, and they're going to make sure. By Friday we'll know if we know beforehand. But as of right now, under the current circumstances, yes, it's scheduled for 10. Again, I reiterate, but we will, if there are any changes that need to be made. Until then, I will echo, what's your name, brother? No, not you. Huh? Okay. I will echo this. At the end of the day, the very intention and spirit with which I did this 7 months ago is the spirit that needs to be implemented. At some point, this needs to end. The judge just favored that. So please, think about that over the next 7 days, and if the judge further clarifies in a different way, we will take care of that, and we will let you know.
Inshallah, we have hadith, quick hadith, inshallah. That's from Brother Abu Mateen.
Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam rasulillah. For those of you who don't know, after Asr we do some kind of hadith or a dars, a quick dars to go. So please, respect this and keep quiet and listen to the hadith, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam rasulillah. On the authority of Aisha, Ra'ila Anha, who reported the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Please,
the
there is a
Messenger of
hadith
Allah,
session.
sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said this. He said, an army will raid the Kaaba, and when it reaches a desert land, all of them will be swallowed up by the earth. She asked, Aisha, Ra'ila Anha, she asked, O Messenger of Allah, why all of them, when they have their markets with them and those who are innocent? He answered, all of them will be swallowed up by the earth, but they will be raised by the judgment according to their intentions. Okay? Let's go. An army will raid the Kaaba. When will this army come? Before the last hour. It will attack the Kaaba, and it will be huge. And what does that mean by it? It will have its markets with it and its innocent people. Meaning the army will be so big that people will be coming along to do business with them. You know what I mean? Because they'll be traveling and all that. So they'll be coming with them. So now what happens with the markets? It said, and the earth will swallow them up. From the first to the last, they'll be swallowed up. No matter what your intention, your punishment will come all together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not differentiate between the one who prays and the one who doesn't pray. The one who sins more than the others. Allah will not differentiate. But you will be raised up upon your intention. And that's how we take the hadith today. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جزاك الله يا فندم. आपको आखिर में वो मिल गई है ना वो अपनी वो बड़ी जरूरी मेरा नाम दिएगा तो मैंने जवाब दिया ये मैं तो देंगे मैं तो जवाब देने वालों में से हूँ मैं तो आप
वालेकुम सलाम जी क्या हाल है आपके